Greetings, this is Patrick J. Byrne, President of the National Civic Council. The COVID-19 crisis and Black Lives Matter protests have exposed deep cultural and economic fault lines in America, with troubling consequences for Australia. With the growing number of Americans falling into unemployment and economic insecurity, while major corporations take bailouts and slash labour costs, something has to give, according to Nouriel Roubini, Professor of Economics at New York University's Stern School of Business. He's worked for the International Monetary Fund, the US Federal Reserve, and the World Bank. He says the United States has a vast underclass of increasingly indebted, socially immobile Americans, African Americans, Latinos, and increasingly whites, who are now revolting against a system that they see as having failed them. There has been a long-running economic-induced epidemic amongst this group that Anne Case calls the deaths of despair, that is, deaths by suicide, alcohol-related disease, and drug overdose. She documents these deaths rising sharply from around 65,000 a year in 1995 to 185,000 in 2018. That's more than the 143,000 Americans who've died from the COVID-19 pandemic as of July 20. The deaths of despair epidemic is almost entirely confined to Americans without a 4-year college degree. Case is Professor Emeritus of Economics and Public Affairs at Princeton University, and she's just published her extensive findings in a book called Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism from Princeton University Press. She says real wages for US men without a college degree, when adjusted for inflation, have fallen for 50 years. At the same time, college graduates earning a premium over those without a degree has risen an astonishing 80%. During the COVID-19 pandemic, those with a college degree are likely to continue earning by working from home and benefiting from the rising stock market, while those in the vast underclass are either non-essential workers at greater risk of losing their jobs and their employer health insurance, or are essential workers at greater risk to the virus. Adding fuel to this crisis, youth unemployment soared from around 8% last February to over 25% in May. Case says that low wages and job insecurity saw deaths of despair rise when unemployment reached 10% during the global financial crisis, then continued to rise even further when unemployment fell to 3.5% just before the COVID-19 crisis. The current protests are not just in America. Protests have also been underway in Middle Eastern, East Asian, Latin American countries, as well as France, indicating that the economic fault lines go far beyond the United States. The International Labour Organization estimates that prior to the pandemic, 70 million young men and women around the world were looking for a job. 160 million young people were living in poverty. 2 in 5 economically active youth were without work, or working but poor. In America, Australia and many other advanced nations, deep economic globalisation, radical trade policies, automation, weakened labour unions and winner-take-all markets have inflicted a heavy toll on the once vibrant middle class and stunted the prospects of young workers. The policy of many corporations has been to replace the well-paid secure jobs that built the post-World War II middle class with part-time, casual, hourly, gig, freelance and contract work. Just as they did after the 2008 global financial crisis, highly leveraged corporations are taking bailouts while maintaining earnings by cutting labour. Today, America has a new class of alienated, insecure workers ripe for radicalisation. Nouriel Roubini has observed that this group has also come to include urban college-educated secular progressives who in recent years have mobilised behind leftist politicians like Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. These radical secularists advance another political agenda. Their cancel culture, statue demolitions and forced sacking of their critics undermine America's global commitment to human rights and free speech, which are the foundations of democracy. In its current state, and facing a possible global depression, it cannot be ruled out that America's problems go so deep that the country may be incapable of running a coherent foreign policy to counter China's aggressive push into Australia's region of the world. This at a time when Australia's commitment to fundamentalist economic ideology has hocked the nation's economic future to China. Where does this leave Australia, which has depended for its protection on strategic alliances, first with Britain and now with a weakened and divided United States? Thank you for listening.